Weeks passed, and the little rabbit grew very old and shabby, but the boy loved him just as much. He loved him so hard that he loved all his whiskers off, and the pink lining to his ears turned grey. He even began to lose his shape, and he scarcely looked like a rabbit any more, except to the boy. To him he was always beautiful, and that was all that the little rabbit cared about. He didn't mind how he looked to other people, because the nursery magic had made him real, and when you are real, shabbiness doesn't matter. And then, one day, the boy was ill. His face grew very flushed, and he talked in his sleep, and his little body was so hot that it burned the little rabbit when he held him close. Strange people came and went in the nursery, and a light burned all night, and through it all the little Velveteen rabbit sat guard and never stirred. It was a long, weary time, for the boy was too ill to play, but he knew that the boy needed him. And while the boy lay half asleep, the little rabbit crept up close to the pillow and whispered all sorts of delightful plans for when the boy would be well again. They would go out in the garden among the flowers and butterflies and play splendid games in the raspberry thicket, just the way they used to. At last, the fever turned, and the boy got better. He was able to sit up in bed and look at picture books, while the little rabbit cuddled close at his side. And one day they let him get up and dress. They had carried the boy out onto the balcony, wrapped in a shawl. The little rabbit sat tangled up among the bedclothes, listening. The boy was going to the seaside tomorrow. Everything was arranged, and now it only remained to carry out the doctor's orders. The room was to be disinfected, and all the books and toys that the boy had played with in the bed must be burnt. "Hooray!" thought the little rabbit. "Tomorrow we shall go to the seashore." Just then, Nana caught sight of him. "How about his old bunny?" "That?" said the doctor. "Why, it's a mass of scarlet fever germs. Burn it at once." "What? Nonsense. Get him a new one. He mustn't have that any more." So, the little rabbit was put into a sack with the old picture books and a lot of rubbish, and carried out to the end of the garden behind the fowl house. That was a fine place to make a bonfire, only the gardener was too busy just then to attend to it. He had the potatoes to dig and the green peas to gather, but next morning he promised to come quite early and burn the whole lot. That night, the boy slept in a different bedroom, and he had a new bunny to sleep with him. It was a splendid bunny, all white plush with real glass eyes. But the boy was too excited to care very much about it. For tomorrow he was going to the seashore, and that in itself was such a wonderful thing that he could think of nothing else. And while the boy was asleep, the little rabbit lay among the old picture books in the corner behind the fowl house, and he felt very lonely. He was shivering a little, for he had always been used to sleeping in a nice warm bed, and by this time his coat had worn so thin and threadbare from hugging that it was no longer any protection to him. Nearby he could see the thicket of raspberry canes in whose shadow he had played with the boy on bygone mornings. He thought of those long sunlit hours in the garden. How happy they were, and a great sadness came over him. He seemed to see them all pass before him, each more beautiful than the other. The flower bed, the quiet evenings in the wood when he lay in the bracken and the little ants ran over his paws, the wonderful day when he first knew that he was real. and he thought of the skin horse, so wise and gentle, and all that he had told him. And a tear, a real tear, trickled down his little shabby velvet nose and fell to the ground. And then a wonderful thing happened. For where the tear had fallen grew a mysterious flower, not at all like any other that grew in the garden. It was so beautiful that the little rabbit forgot to cry and just sat there watching it. Then suddenly the blossom opened, and out stepped the loveliest fairy in the whole world. She came close to the little rabbit and gathered him up in her arms and kissed him on his velveteen nose that was all damp from crying. "Little rabbit, don't you know who I am?" The rabbit looked up at her, and it seemed to him that he had seen her face before, but he couldn't think where. "I am the nursery magic fairy. I take care of all the playthings that the children have loved. When they are old and worn out, and the children don't need them any more, then I come and take them away with me and turn them into real. Wasn't I real before? You were real to the boy because he loved you. Now you shall be real to everyone." And she held the little rabbit close in her arms and flew with him into the wood. It was light now, for the moon had risen. All the forest was beautiful, and the fronds of the bracken shone like frosted silver. In the open glade between the tree trunks, the wild rabbits danced with their shadows on the velvet grass. But when they saw the fairy, they all stopped dancing and stood round in a ring to stare at her. "I've brought you a new playfellow. You must be very kind to him and teach him all he needs to know in Rabbitland, for he is going to live with you forever and ever." And she kissed the little rabbit again. "Run and play, little rabbit." But the little rabbit sat quite still for a moment and never moved, for when he saw all the wild rabbits dancing around him, he remembered about his hind legs, and he didn't want them to see that he was made all in one piece. He did not know that when the fairy kissed him that last time, she had changed him altogether. And he might have sat there a very long time, too shy to move, if just then something hadn't tickled his nose. And before he thought what he was doing, he lifted his hind toe to scratch it. He actually had hind legs. Instead of dingy velveteen, he had brown fur, soft and shiny. His ears twitched by themselves, and his whiskers were so long that they brushed the grass. He gave one leap, and the joy of using those hind legs was so great that he went springing about the turf on them, jumping sideways and whirling around as the others did. He grew so excited that when at last he did stop to thank the fairy, she had gone. He was a real rabbit at last, at home with the other rabbits. Autumn passed, and winter. And in the spring, while the boy was out playing in the wood, 2 rabbits crept out and peeped at him. One of them was brown all over, but the other had markings under his fur, and about his little soft nose and his round black eyes there was something familiar, so that the boy thought to himself, "Why, he looks just like my old bunny that was lost when I had scarlet fever." But he never knew that it really was his own bunny, come back to look at the child who had first helped him to be real.
Got memories? Get DVDs. Tapes won't last forever. Digital transfers will. Do it today, so you'll have your memories tomorrow. Call us at 399-1820 or online at myrealvideo.com. Mold and time ruin videotapes. Tapes won't last forever. Digital transfers will. Do it today so you'll have your memories tomorrow. Call us at 399-1820 or online at myrealvideo.com.